modern Middle East is a region troubled by war, terrorism, weak and failed states, and civil unrest. But how did it get this way? The map of today's Middle East was mostly drawn after the First World War, the war that planted many of the seeds of conflict that still plague Israel, Palestine, Iraq, Syria, and even Iran today.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Middle East in 30 minutes-ish. If my voice sounds different, I got to get this out there. For those of you that don't know, Soundboard took an epic crash on Friday. Rest in peace, Rodecaster Pro 2. I bought another one of you because it's so good. So we're taking it old school, baby. This is where we started. You remember these headphones? Back to episode 1, and I still remember how to use this stuff. So a Middle East in 30 minutes-ish. A lot of the good stuff comes in the ish of that segment. I got my brother Ghost here that's going to bring us up to speed on a lot of stuff. It sounds like it's going to be an interesting conversation. We kind of had a little bit of a talk before we got started. So let me pay a bill, and then it is showtime for you folks. You know, Rumble takes care of us, not just here at the AlphaWarrior Show, but with all the shows and with Badlands. So let's give Rumble some love too, and this is how you can help. They can freeze your accounts, shut off your cards, lock you out of your own money overnight. Banks don't protect you, they control you. At least they try. That's why real financial freedom starts with ownership. Introducing Rumble Wallet, a non-custodial wallet built for people who refuse to give up control. With Rumble Wallet, you don't just buy digital currency like Bitcoin and Tether. You can own Tether, gold, real gold on the blockchain. Through Tether Gold, you get direct ownership of physical gold bars, each one fully allocated, verifiable by serial number, purity, and weight. This isn't paper gold. This isn't an IOU. This is real gold without a bank, without vaults, storage fees, or gatekeepers. You can buy, sell, or move it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, even when traditional gold markets are closed. And if you want, Tether Gold can be redeemed for physical gold. That is power. And when you support creators on Rumble, you can tip them directly using the Rumble wallet right about here, peer-to-peer and outside the banking system. No permissions, no middlemen, no cancel button. This wallet is yours forever. So again, folks, if you guys want to keep all of us going and keep Rumble platform going, help them in this parallel economy. That QR code's on the screen. If you're on a different platform, you got to jump over to Rumble. And if you're watching the replay, that link will be down in the description. So with that, it is showtime. Brother, thank you for joining me. I'm interested in where this conversation is going to go. So let me hand it over to you.
Yeah, man. Good to see you, Alpha. Yeah. So let's start with like kind of the big story from this week, because I think the biggest story from this week is psychological, which is, I think, kind of the crux of everything happening right now. Is, you know, the war for truth, the war for information, right? Joe Kent, obviously, that's a big op, whichever way you want to look at it, because there's certainly conflicting opinions on what that is. And so I have my gut on it, and that's all it is gut. Obviously, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows for certain. But I want to take a step back and play a video that I found from a couple of years ago of an interview he did that I thought was interesting. And then we'll talk about it. But let me share my screen. And this is, I downloaded it. I always download the videos kind of in low quality, just in case I need to put them in the Badlands news brief, because if you put them in too high of quality, the Substack player screws up. So hopefully this quality is fine, but there we go. I'll make it full screen. And it's like a 5-minute clip. I'm not going to play the whole clip. He makes the point that I want to talk about. And once he makes that, I'll shut it down.
You worked for about 20 years serving in the U.S. military as not only a Green Beret, eventually a CIA paramilitary officer as well. This all culminated when you were working in the Trump administration, and your wife, who was a naval officer, was actually killed while serving in Syria. You blamed her death on rogue elements within the Trump administration whom undermined the president's withdrawal strategy in Syria. Can you explain how you came to that conclusion?
I mean, I was in the military right when the war on terror started. I came in just before 2001. So I was a Green Beret for, I did 11 combat deployments. Then I went right into the CIA as a paramilitary operations officer when I hit the 20-year mark in the military. That was going to be my second career. My late wife, Shannon, was a Navy signals intelligence specialist. She spoke Arabic. So by the time I met her, she already had quite a few combat deployments. She was deployed for the last push to go take out the last bit of ground that ISIS controlled in 2018, and they reached their objective by late November, December of 2018. And that's when Trump sent out a famous tweet, but that tweet also had orders behind it that said, hey, let's get our troops out of Syria, because in Trump's mind, this is what the American people hired him to do. He ran on, hey, ISIS is out of control. We are going to go in there. We're going to crush and dismantle ISIS. And we very much did that. I was deployed under Obama in 2016 in the counter-ISIS mission, and we had no direction whatsoever. We had no authorities. We were over there very much in harm's way, taking casualties, but we didn't have the leadership at the executive level to make hard decisions and give us the authorities to take out ISIS. Trump came in 2017, and within less than probably about 18 months, we had defeated the Islamic Caliphate, lock, stock, and barrel. They didn't control any more ground. Now, there was a lot of people in permanent Washington, D.C., the administrative state, the national security blob, whatever you want to call it, that they really wanted to stay in Syria. They were mad that we had left Iraq in the first place. We had reestablished a foothold back in northern Iraq, which is relatively peaceful, but we had a foothold in Syria. But that was all tied up with the counter-ISIS mission. But these people at the very senior levels of the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, the State Department, there was a lot of Obama holdouts and even some old George Bush people that just got swept into the Trump administration, like Secretary of Defense Mattis, that they wanted to stay there forever, though they also wanted to turn this into regime change 2.0 against Assad, which to me at that point in my career, I was like, have you guys seen, like, did you guys fight a different war than me? Because every time we do this regime change thing, like, it doesn't work out in our favor. So I was amazed that these people even had the audacity to talk like this. But the orders came down in December of 2018. They were supposed to be out of there. My late wife and everybody else that was in Syria at the time, they were supposed to get on airplanes and fly to Erbil by Christmas Eve of 2018. Now, I could see this all play out in real time. There was a lot of feet dragging going on. There was senior level officials for the administration who were giving the orders, and there was these mid-level appointees that were just like, well, we have to wait till we get more orders, just really tying it up in bureaucratic speak. Because if you've been in the government for any length of time, you understand how to drag your feet. It's not very complicated to do. And unfortunately, I don't think Trump had enough folks that were loyal to him and to his agenda to understand what was happening at the deeper levels of bureaucracy. So I saw this play out. I was talking with my wife, and I was like, I think that they're going to keep you guys there. And she's like, yeah, I kind of get that feeling too. But we do have orders to be out of here by Christmas Eve of 2018. And tragically, they remained. And about a month later, on the 16th of January, 2019, her and 3 other Americans were killed by a suicide bomber in Manbij, Syria. So I had a brief I decided I was going to resign from the government at that time. We have 2 kids, 5 and 7 now, but they were very young. So I just really wanted to focus on my children. But I had a chance to meet Trump at Dover. And I basically told him what I just told you. I said, look, you don't know who I am, but I've been fighting these wars at the ground level since they started, really. And you're getting it right in a way that no other president has. Your instincts are right. Like when Trump as a candidate said that, like, we got lied to about Iraq and we never should have gone in the first place and we should get out, like that he was 100% right, his gut instinct. So I shared that with him, but then I just told him, I was like, you're getting undermined in a way that I've never seen before at the mid to senior levels. And I came in under Clinton, I served all through Bush, I served all through Obama. And what I saw on day one of the Trump administration, the way that we had mid-level bureaucrats who just basically said that we don't have to listen to the Trump administration. And that's ultimately what led to my wife getting killed.
Okay, I ended up playing the full clip because I forgot that it took the full 5 minutes for him to make his point. But just to recap, if for those who didn't really understand the message that he was saying, is that he blames subversive elements inside the first Trump administration, specifically the CIA, for killing his wife. And then as soon as his wife died, he resigned and basically like reflected on like everything, his life, all that. And so I want to ask you a question, because I know people get triggered when they hear this kind of information. Like information like this triggers people in different ways. There are a lot of people who want to believe that there's no way that Trump could ever be hoodwinked, that President Trump has everything under control, that as soon as President Trump becomes president, snap your fingers, everyone in the government is suddenly a white hat, and there are no bad elements. Alpha, when did the FBI come to your house and arrest you? What was the exact date?
That was January. Well, first time they came to my house was January 15th of 2021. The arrest was made in the evening of January 20th, 2021. So raid happened under Trump, arrest happened under Biden.
Okay, so the raid happened under Trump. Do you blame President Trump for sending the FBI to your house to raid you?
Nope.
Okay. So it's fair to say that between the anecdote that you just gave and that you've given many times, and the anecdote that Joe Kent just gave, and then just the general observations that all of us made during the first Trump administration, that he's right, that there were subversive elements inside of the government, inside the Trump administration, who were working to undermine him. And all we have to do is look at Syria right now. We still have soldiers in Syria as of right now, 2026. So when Joe Kent says that they're like, I specifically remember that tweet that Trump sent out where he said, we're out of here. We're getting out of Syria. We're done. Out. Never left. He's got a point. He's right. Now let's play a little game. You're the guy, let's just say the white hat team, let's just call it that, the Q team, the white hat team, whatever you want to say, the people who are planning this whole op. And your job is to recruit people for that op, right? What kind of personality profile trait are you looking for when you go to recruit people? Are you looking for people who are highly motivated, who have, for lack of a better word, a chip on their shoulder, who have an axe to grind, who basically can't be negotiated with or leveraged or compromised because of maybe something personal that happened to them that, would inspire them to see the mission through no matter what?
It's going to be mission specific. The most important thing I'm going to be looking for in all these missions is somebody that can't be leveraged. As far as a chip on their shoulder, if it's something that's going to be more aggressive, maybe kinetic, I'll probably look for someone with a chip on their shoulder. If it's something that's more strategy based, I'm probably not going to go for the chip on their shoulder because we get biases. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Emotions affect. So it'd be mission specific on the recruitment. But the one thing I'd be looking for, like from a white hat perspective, is somebody that cannot be leveraged. There's nothing in the background that can be leveraged against them.
Okay. Fair. So again, like when we do these analysis, when I do this analysis, I've told you many times before, I look at less of the actuals of like what's being reported. I mean, I certainly consider that stuff, but again, I can't verify on the ground what's happening in a foreign country on the other side of the world, right? One side says one thing, another side says another thing. Who knows who's telling the truth? Sometimes they both agree on something and it's like, okay, well, maybe that's what happened. But a lot of times it's conflicting reports. So I tend to focus more on like what the leaders around the world are how they're reacting to stories. So even if a story is fake, are they taking that story and leveraging it and using it to advance an agenda? And then what is the agenda they're advancing? And then pattern recognition takes over and you can kind of start to recognize who is advancing bad agenda, like malevolent agendas versus benevolent agendas. So one of the patterns that I've noticed when it comes to the second Trump administration, I think it's a fair statement to assume that these subversive elements still exist in the government. I don't think they're gone yet. That's at least what I've observed. And we certainly saw that under Biden, right? So one of the patterns that I've noticed is that there are specific people who seem to be playing key roles in, at least optically, who knows what's actually happening behind the scenes. Three of the people who I've identified that follow this pattern: Jared Kushner, Howard Lutnick, Steve Wickoff, and I'm sure there's others who I'm not thinking of at the moment. All three of them have a chip on their shoulder. And that chip on their shoulder is that they have a loved one who has been directly abused by the deep state. Steve Wickoff's son died of fentanyl overdose after becoming addicted to opioids. I believe it was because of like a sports injury. Howard Lutnick's brother was killed in 9/11. And Jared Kushner's father was prosecuted by Chris Christie. And I don't know if you have you seen this Chris Christie clip? I think I shared it in the Badlands private chat. If not,
sure.
All right, here, let me see if I have it. It's right here. It's like this has been making the rounds. This is a very recent interview, I believe, that Chris Christie did. But listen to what he says here. This is actually really funny.
Oh, let me bring it up. If you want to start it over, I didn't realize I pulled it.
Oh, wait. Sorry. Okay.
All right.
I think the
There we go.
single biggest reason Jared got into the Trump White House was to ensure that his father would be pardoned.
The people who don't know, who's his father?
His father was, when I prosecuted him in 2004, the second richest man in New Jersey. He hired a prostitute to seduce his sister's husband.
Yeah.
Videotaped it. And then on the day of his sister's son's engagement party, an engagement party that he was going to attend, he had the videotape delivered to his sister's house so she could see her husband having sex with someone else.
You are the head of the transition in 2016. There's going to be some interfacing with Jared Kushner, I'd imagine, right?
Much to his chagrin, yes. Yeah. The day that Trump was naming me, he went into Trump's office and said, "You can't do this," in front of me.
In front of you?
Oh, yeah.
And what was the argument?
I'm immoral, I'm a bad person, and said that it should have never been prosecuted. It wasn't a crime. It was something that should have been handled by the rabbis because it was a family dispute.
Oh.
And I just sat there and didn't say anything. And finally, Trump looked at me and said, "Are you going to say anything to defend yourself?" I said, "I want to defend myself to him." And by the way, I looked at him and said, "By the way, your father pled guilty to all 18 counts." So
there's some credit to Trump in this, that he said, "All right, fine."
Yeah, he named me anyway. But then, of course, he fired me because Jared just continued to pound me.
But that was Jared, you think, that precipitated that firing?
Oh, I know it was Jared.
Okay.
Because both Donald Trump and Steve Bannon told me it was Jared.
Okay.
Some interesting little gems in there, bro.
Dude, and look, like for the past year or two, you can go check the tape. I've been saying that I think that this animus between Chris Christie and Jared Kushner is the reason that Jared Kushner has been so like instrumental in this Middle East stuff. And here's why. Like I've been speculating this for a long time, and this just like affirms so many things. So first of all, let's just back up and look at this video. There's a lot of stuff happening here. Number one, what he's describing, what Chris Christie is describing sounds like something from The Apprentice. And I never watched The Apprentice, like back when it was on television, but I did watch it because on the Book of Trump, I think it was the second episode, I did The Apprentice because I was like trying to introduce the Trump character. And so I went and watched several episodes, like the episodes with Dennis Rodman. Those are the ones that interest me. But one thing I noticed when watching it was that I was like, man, this show is not really what I thought it would be about. Like I figured it would be about like business acumen and that kind of stuff. It wasn't at all. Like really what it was about was Trump putting people in really uncomfortable situations, and then seeing how they react. Like, can they keep their cool? Can they keep their composure? Do they vehemently defend themselves when they've been wronged, when they've been like, when somebody's trying to lay blame on them? The drama would like happen, like reality television drama, which is the reason I don't watch reality television. But Trump would like lean into that. He would be like, "Oh, tell me more about that." And I'm like, "Wait, he really is." Like, I figured he would be like, "I don't care about that. Tell me more about the business stuff." No, he was leaning in to the drama, and he, to the extent that he would even take Omarosa, who was like from the first season, back before these celebrities came on, and he would reinsert her into the show, and then she would go in there and just like wreak havoc. She'd go in there and pick fights with people. And then she would get in his limousine and they cruise around. He'd be like, "Tell me about what happened." And she'd be like, "Well, this guy is she'd give him all the intel." And it's like, so Omarosa was kind of like his little operative that would go in there and just throw firebombs at people. And then Trump would see how they would react. And then he'd bring them in the boardroom and he'd be like, "Which one of you can keep your composure?" And he always would go, the few episodes I saw, he would always go with the people who would like keep their composure, like the people who would like vehemently defend themselves, who were like, as he calls them, killers. Like that's what he was always looking for. And this situation, like he obviously was setting these situations up, especially like with Omarosa. First of all, the Omarosa thing, like that's an illusion that makes me think of the kayfabe and the stuff that you see in the political world. Like how many operatives does he send in now just to do something, just to start a narrative, just to see how everyone reacts to it, just to see how Lindsey Graham reacts, or John Bolton or whoever. So
in the line of work I used to do, like when we'd be doing a wiretap or surveillance, we used to call it tickle the wire. Yeah, we would actually send a public information officer would reach out to the media and send them a soundbite or a statement that was complete bullshit. And it was, "Someone in the homicide of John Smith has come forward and is providing us information." And the reason this matters to me is because we hear this kind of shit now, but nobody came forward. Nobody. But we were running surveillance on social media, phone lines, all that. Because guess what? All of a sudden the gang's like, hey, yo, have you talked to so-and-so? Hey, yo, have you talked to so-and-so? Because remember, they're not going to come. It's not like the movies where they're going to be on the phone and be like, hey, Joe, are you going to tell the cops that Jim Bob did the murder? Like they don't do that, folks. Once in a great anomaly, you'll get a retard that will, but they won't. But what they will do is they'll all start calling the same person. And then
yeah. And then you see the pattern, and then that kind of clues you in.
100%. So when you're describing this with Trump, I'm like, damn, man.
Oh, dude, it blew my mind. It blew my mind when I picked up on that, and I was like, and I was doing the show with Patrick Gunnels, and Patrick, his assertion at the time, because he was like a huge Apprentice fan and had seen every single episode, and his assertion was that it was like a recruiting operation, like that's how Trump recruited, and it was crazy. I'd go and look at the cast of some of these seasons, especially the later ones, and it was all these people who reappear like in the first Trump administration, like or around it or whatever, right? I mean, it was very, very strange, the patterns.
I'm gonna have to go watch it now. I've never watched it, so
dude, it's like watch I think it's the 13th season. That was the final one with Dennis Rodman, and literally Dennis Rodman was kicked off. Like this was crazy to figure out. And then immediately went to North Korea and met Kim Jong-un for like the first time. 2 weeks later, like 3 weeks later, he was kicked off the show, off the set, and then he like 3 weeks later he was in North Korea for the first time, meeting with Kim Jong-un, and then he's the one who gave Kim Jong-un the art of the deal, and connected him and Trump, and then that led to the meeting at the DMZ. So like my theory is that was a recruitment thing. And again, Dennis Rodman in that situation doesn't even really need to be that read in on anything. It's just like, hey, Dennis Rodman is his personality. We know for a fact that the entire Kim family were huge Chicago Bull fans, huge like 90s dynasty Chicago Bulls fans, to the extent that there are reports in the 90s where like the Clinton administration will be meeting with the North Koreans, and they would stop the meeting and be like, the Bulls game is on, we're leaving. And like these guys in like military outfits would leave and go watch the Bulls game and then come back. Like, so they were all like fanatical Bulls fans. So just sending Dennis Rodman over there to become friends with the guy, and they're both kind of like loners and, you know, whatever, like rejected by society. That friendship, I think like that could have just been game theory. That's like all you really needed to be. Now go back to the Chris Christie thing, like back up to that. I think that situation was orchestrated by Trump. Like Trump talk shit about Christie during the campaign. He then brings him on. He's like, yeah, I'm going to bring you on like to my administration. Like during the interview, has Kushner come in there, and Kushner like says his piece, and then he turns to Christie and he's like, what do you have to say for yourself? Literally, that's what he did on like every single episode of The Apprentice that I saw. That's what he did, where somebody would make an accusation of somebody else, and Trump would turn to him and say, what do you have to say for yourself? And if the person did what Christie did, where he's like, I'm not going to say anything, I don't have to defend myself, I am, like, Trump would say, well, that's not the right response. I expected you to like vehemently fight for yourself, because if you're not going to defend yourself, you're not going to defend me. You can't work for me. You're fired. And of course, Christie tells the story. He got fired later. But the fact that Kushner has that animus towards Christie, what's important to know about that is that Chris Christie is like a lapdog of the Zionist community. Like, he is a lapdog of Netanyahu. He was totally made by AIPAC. There's so many videos of him in Kevlar in Israel, like walking around the war zones and like so much. I mean, he is a lapdog. And then you have stories from back in the day when Jared was a young boy, whenever, when Netanyahu was the deputy foreign minister and then the foreign minister, it was the early 90s, when he would travel to New York for the UN meetings, he wouldn't stay in a hotel. He'd stay at the Kushner's house, and he'd sleep in Jared's bed. So like Jared would go, whatever, sleep on the couch or wherever. And then Netanyahu would take his bed. That's how close Netanyahu and Jared's dad were. Why didn't any of these people pick up the phone and call Chris Christie in 2005 and say, hey, dude, like, this is a family situation. You know, the sister-in-law, the sister's husband was cheating on him. Charles Kushner was trying to convey that to the sister to prove it to her, like, lay off. And look, not condoning what Charles Kushner did, but the fact that 18 charges for doing that, and then they threw the book at him, no criminal history. You've been in law enforcement, 2 years in prison for a guy who's like an elderly man, and whatever, like 50s or 60s, however old he was, and didn't have a criminal history. 2 years in prison for a first-time offender
does not happen.
Does not happen. Yeah. And then Chris Christie went and did interviews afterwards and said, this was the worst criminal I've ever prosecuted. That's what he said.
I have seen that.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the question begs itself. I need to go look into who the guy was that, like, who the sister's husband was, because maybe he was a powerful member of the diaspora, but nobody in the diaspora picks up the phone and calls on behalf of Charles Kushner and is like, hey, man, lay off. Like, give him a sweetheart deal, slap on the wrist, probation, whatever. Nothing. And then Jared Kushner every weekend flies a private jet to the prison to visit his dad every single weekend for 2 years, and then has to take over his dad's company. And then the Qataris, by the way, have to come in and bail him out when the real estate properties that they had bought are going upside down because of the 2008 crash. Why didn't any of the diaspora members, like the members of the Jewish community, why didn't they step in and help like buy him out? Why was it the Qataris and the Arabs who had to step in? And by the way, that's the relationship. That's why there was a relationship going into the first term between the Qataris and the Emiratis. It's because they had done business with Tom Barrack and Jared Kushner prior. And everyone looks at that and says that that's something nefarious. But I look at it very differently. I look at it like, if I'm Jared Kushner, I'm like, where the hell were you, Netanyahu? Where the hell were you when my dad was getting thrown in prison? Why couldn't you pick up the phone and just ask Chris Christie to back off a little bit? Like, prosecute him, but don't give him prison time. Something like that. You know, I mean, that stuff happens all the time. How often do you hear? Yeah, how often do you hear about the elites being prosecuted for stuff like that? But
You
like,
don't.
Yeah.
I mean, recently maybe you start to get it, but prior, you know, especially during that era, you don't. And when you look at the you know, and I don't know the entire story, but I am very curious to who is the husband. Is there's definitely more to that story than what's being represented.
Yeah.
2 years, zero criminal history. That's red flag number one. But you can even go down to what's a family matter, right? If you look at Jared's father, well, obviously he knew something was going on because he got somebody to go and create the recording, you know. So
Yep.
there's obviously a known history. This is not one of those, hey, you go tell your sister, hey man, you know, my future brother-in-law is a dirtbag. You know, there's something that was more at stake, because look at the and if it's true that the deployment was on that date that was special for the family to deploy it, then he was looking to do mass impact to where the sister would not be able to deny it. The pressure from the family, the embarrassment, the humiliation would be terrible, but it was going to ultimately give him the result, which was this guy was not going to be a part of the family.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
when you go through those lengths, there's more to the story than the dude was just some POS that had an affair.
Yeah. And so again, like, the point I'm making is, regardless of how you feel about Charles Kushner, what he did, like, you can judge him for that all you want. But the point is that the psychology of Jared after that, like, that's my point, is like, Netanyahu was a powerful man in Israel at that time, powerful man in world politics at that time, right? He could have easily picked up the phone. Any number of people could have picked up the phone and just advocated. None of them did. And now Jared's in a situation where he's negotiating. They say he's negotiating for those people, but I think he's negotiating against those people. And you look at everything that's played out in the Middle East in the first term and the second term, and I think there's animus there. Steve Wickoff, again, son dies of fentanyl. Who was behind the opioid epidemic? That would be the Sackler family of Purdue Pharma. The Sackler family, of course, is Jewish. You know, just because they're Jewish does not make them immediately like that. That doesn't mean the diaspora is involved, except where did the opium come from? Afghanistan. How did they get from Afghanistan to America? Well, we went and invaded Afghanistan, overthrew the Taliban, and then let the drug dealers come in, grow the opium, and then traffic it to the black market, where Purdue Pharma picked it up. And then the rest is history. And then, by the way, when we turned Afghanistan back over to the Taliban, they shut down the opium production. So there's definitely and that's, of course, when fentanyl started to ramp up, was when the opium fell off. So yeah, like, the Sackler family was in large part responsible for the death of Steve Wickoff's son, right? But it wasn't just them; it was all the co-collaborators who brought us to the Middle East in the first place under false pretenses, had us invade Iraq, Afghanistan, overthrow it, and then start growing opium that fueled the opium epidemic. And then, of course, Howard Lutnick, 9/11. I mean, plenty of people believe that Israel was involved in that. There were a number of Jewish businessmen who told their entire companies to stay home that day and not work, and like work from home. And Howard Lutnick was not given that courtesy. And he, as a result, lost the most employees of any company. I think it was 851, including his younger brother. And if you don't know the story of the Lutnicks, the three of them, their parents died when the youngest one, the brother, was 14. Howard was like 19, and the sister was in her 20s. And so Howard and the sister raised the younger brother, so he's like a brother, but he's also kind of like, there's like a surrogate son situation there. And then he goes and works for Howard's company, and is very close with Howard's kids. Like those are the stories that he tells. And then he dies in 9/11, because everyone says, well, Howard Lutnick wasn't there. Why wasn't he there? Well, he was taking his kid to kindergarten. And like, is the expectation that he like coordinated the start date of kindergarten with 9/11? Like, that seems a little strange. It seems more likely that if he was doing that, he would have also told his brother to stay home that day. So again, I think he has an axe to grind. I think all these people have an axe to grind. And when I look at Joe Kent, again, could be a good guy, could be a bad guy. I think you can play those games all day, but I think what happens is that people get stuck. They get stuck in that little argument, whether like it's Tucker or Joe Kent or anyone else arguing over whether or not he's a good guy or a bad guy, as opposed to just looking at the messaging of what they're doing and the actual impact that's having on the Overton window. And it could all just be part of game theory. I've gotten more text messages in the past few days from normies in my family who I've been trying to red pill for years. And these are people who still watch Fox News. And they have texted me in the past few days since this has all happened and been like, all the things that I've been trying to red pill them on for years, they literally just pieced it all together. And they're like, yeah, I think this is actually what's happening now. And I'm like, holy shit. And it's all because of, the thing that made it lock in place was because of that resignation letter from Joe Kent and watching that Tucker interview. And these are people who are 3-time Trump voters, hardcore MAGA, all of that. And so again, if I look at what Joe Kent is, good guy, bad guy, whatever, his motive, despite the fact that he was in the CIA and they say you never leave the CIA, he blames the CIA for the mother of his children was killed by the CIA under false pretenses because they were subverting President Trump's order to leave Syria. That to me puts a chip on his shoulder in a way that he can't be leveraged, he can't be compromised, because if he wants vengeance against those people, justice, he's going to do whatever he has to do to make that happen. Now, again, we can get into the argument, like if you want to believe that he was doing this all earnestly, we can get into the argument, was his resignation with the timing of it? He literally timed it the day before this major Senate hearing happened, which basically gave free press and advertising for the Senate hearing that more people watched as a result of that. Was he doing this under orders from the blessing of Tulsi Gabbard and Donald Trump? Or was he just acting in earnest from a game theory standpoint? Did they recruit him knowing that he would reach a certain point where he would want to resign? Now, I tend to kind of lean more to the former because of the timing of it. But if you go watch the Tucker interview, and I've watched it twice now just to make sure I didn't misunderstand anything, not only did Joe Kent never say anything bad about President Trump, he actually said multiple times that President Trump has a unique personality, and he's the only person who can actually solve this problem and probably will. Actually, all of his disparaging remarks were focused at the State Department, the CIA, the subversive elements in the Trump administration, Israel, foreign governments, foreign lobby groups. That's who basically he was aiming all of his animus at throughout the entire interview. And I found that very, very interesting.
How do you feel about his statement? I had the video on my bookmarks. I don't think was it Tucker. It was one of the first ones that he did. But he came out and he says, President Trump is deceiving the American people with the information of why we're at war with Iran. Because see, my issue is with him and why with me, he doesn't resonate as a good guy is, and this, comes on the heels of what a lot of the other people that have said with Trump is you can have disagreements. I'm good with that. And as a matter of fact, you want that. Yep. Because, then it means the best argument is what will result in whatever decision the president's going to make ultimately. But when you come out and you're saying that the president's operating from a place of deception, this is where I start to pump the brakes and be like, okay, is this subversion? It's one thing to come out and say, hey, the president is making the best decision he thinks he can make, but the people providing this information to him are lying and I have issues with Susie Wiles, I have issues with this person or this person, name them by name, right? I'm good with that. But when you come out and you say that it's the president that's operating from a position of intentional, deceit or misdirection, then I have a huge issue with that part.
Is that what the statement said? I mean,
Yeah,
let me I missed where he said that Trump is deceiving the American. Because I went back and watched that first interview. I haven't watched.
I don't think he used the word. I don't think he used the word deceive. I think he said he's misrepresenting. So, but I'll look for the clip.
Yeah. Because he offers multiple theories. Because I went back and watched it a second time to make sure that I wasn't like misunderstanding what the exact words he was using. And the thing that I took away from it was he offered a couple of theories of speculating like what could be the reason. He didn't say a specific reason for like why the war happened with Iran, but he talked about potentially being given bad intel. He talked about potentially the information media environment just fueling the momentum of it. He talked about the potential gatekeepers around President Trump that were keeping bad information out. The two other things that I noticed that he did is he didn't name anybody. He was asked to name people, and he was like, I don't want to do that right now because I don't want to fuel drama. I really just want to focus on the message here, which is that there are bad actors who are subverting this whole situation. And then the other thing he said that he's like, I know they're going to come after me. I know that my friends in the administration, they have a job to do. I respect that. Yeah, they're going to come after me. That's cool. Like, do what you got to do. No hard feelings. Because it seems to me that if you wanted to maximize the subversion, if your intent was to subvert, and maybe that was his intent, you would name names, you would bring the spotlight off of you and start saying, it's this guy, it's this guy, it's this guy, it's this guy, whoever it is. And you would basically be more disparaging toward Trump than he was, because he wasn't very disparaging. He wasn't disparaging at all. Like, he actually said Trump's the only one who can fix this. He probably will.
If you're operating alone,
yeah,
yes. But if you're operating as an operation, then I would say no.
Yeah,
because then you got to look at what's the power I bring. Joe Kent, he's a freaking GI Joe. The dude's a badass.
Yep.
The dude, you would even consider him like the underdog story and what's kind of going on with this narrative. The dude lost his wife in combat. Like, there's nothing about this man's story that's going to make anybody at the surface level be like, oh, this dude would betray his country. It's to the counter. Most of the stuff that's in his story would reinforce, like, no, this dude's a patriot. That's what he's got going for him.
Yep.
That's the weapon. When someone with that mentality then presents whether it's directly or implied, presents the argument that President Trump is either incompetent through bad intel through his organization, or President Trump himself is doing the misrepresentation, you don't have to be the one naming names, because all the sideshow is doing that. The Candace Owens are doing that. The Jake Shields are doing that. The Dan Bazarians are doing that. The Tucker Carlsons are doing that. What you're doing is you're laying the foundation for legitimacy to their narratives by showing, hey, I'm not doing that because for whatever the motive is. But what I will tell you is that Trump ain't got a hold on these things like y'all think. Then all of a sudden, people that may have not have weighed Tucker or Candace's statements with some authority now step back and be like, well, I know he's good. And if he's saying that they don't got a hold on this like I thought, maybe what these other people are saying is legitimate. And it's that confusion. I think it would have been more beneficial for him to come out and be like, hey, look, here's my position, and here's the specifics why. Because then there's no room for people to take things out of context or to imply.
But isn't that kind of what he did? I mean, he said that he thinks that Israel has undue influence on our government. He says he thinks Israel created ISIS. He says he blames them for 9/11. Basically, with Israel, affirming a lot of the theories that people have conclusions people have reached on their own through, including myself, through research. Which again, that could be confirmation bias. I totally get that. That could be just to hey, I want to make myself legitimate by confirming your own bias, and I'm aware of that dynamic.
He did a fantastic job of putting Israel on the spotlight, which for all the stuff we understand is great. But what I'm saying is the only names you're hearing from him is Trump and Israel.
Yeah,
and it's weak. At the way we understand it, we can't control what Israel's going to do, right? But we can control our government. So since you were in the apparatus, tell us which are the specific people that are creating the scenario with Trump. Who do you think is either withholding information from Trump or giving him bad information? Because if you're saying Trump is not getting the right information, that means you have to have the intelligence of that, which means you know who has the good info and you know who has the bad info. If you're going to come out and do a resignation letter, because there's no way anyone's going to make me believe that his resignation letter, that he didn't think that it was going to generate exactly what's happening right now.
Yeah. And the fact that it happened the night before, like the day before this major intelligence hearing in the Senate, and then he immediately that night is on Tucker. It's like there's coordination there. Whatever the coordination is,
whatever the coordination is.
Yeah.
It's there. Yeah.
So like the way the place that I would land that, because again, my gut, which you can't turn off your gut, like your gut is just your gut, right? My gut is that this is somebody who was recruited for this specific purpose to do what he just did, whether it was ordered or it was just part of game theory that they understood he would do this at a certain point, and this is the point that made the most sense. That's what my gut tells me. That doesn't mean it's accurate. It doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean that that's what it is. But more important than whether or not he's wearing a white hat or a black hat is the net effect of what he did. And what's the net effect of his resignation letter and the fallout from it? And then the net effect that I've noticed in my personal life, more so than pretty much any other thing that has happened up until this point, including the assassination of Charlie Kirk, including the Iran war, including the 12-day war, all of it. More people have texted me in the past couple of days and reaching conclusions on their own that I've been trying, of things I've been trying to get them to see for years than at any other point in this entire process. And that has been, I'm like, wow, this really has shifted the Overton window, where it seems like Fox News watching normies, which is what I would describe a lot of these people as, seem to be ready to have the conversation that our government is controlled by foreign influence, whether you want to believe that's Israel or Qatar or China. Something, by the way, that we were talking about 10 or 11 years ago when we first elected President Trump, but for some reason, everyone seems to have forgotten. We were talking about it under Biden as well. Everyone seemed to have forgotten it. But that's very cute. But yeah, so that's kind of where I would land at, is just that the net effects of the op, I think, have been significantly damaging, not necessarily to President Trump's reputation, which there were already plenty of people out there accusing him of being, an Israeli puppet. We've had that discussion so many times, and my research, I think, in my opinion, disproves that, or at least challenges it. But more damaging, I think, to the Israel lobby and the people operating inside of what Joe Kent called permanent Washington, and bringing the spotlight to that, and understanding that if these subversive elements do exist within the Trump administration, and I think that those people were put there on purpose, by the way. Mike Huckabee, I've talked about him before. I think Mike Huckabee, the moment he was named, I said, that's an op, because there's no way that in 2025 you are appointing a guy when you have the entire Middle East on fire, ready, on the brink of a major war, and at the center of the whole thing, the epicenter, is the Palestine-Israel conflict, the two-state solution being the divisive issue. There's no way you appoint a guy who for 30 years has been saying there's no such thing as Palestine. Just take a pencil, erase it off the map, and it's already Israel. It's that simple. That's what Mike Huckabee's been saying for 30 or 40 years. You just don't appoint that guy as ambassador unless the goal is to humiliate him at some point and kind of expose that dynamic, which of course we've seen happen. So again, there's a few other people in the administration who I think I've kind of pegged as in that same kind of mindset, and we'll see what happens. But I don't really trust anyone at this point. I think it's hard to trust anyone except for Trump. And that's kind of the chaos that he's created in a really positive way, I think. I will play this one clip, and my kids are awake now, so we probably are running out of time. But this is a really, really interesting clip that I just saw. And right here, Scott Bessent being grilled on NBC about negotiating through the back channels with Iran about allowing them to sell oil, right? Unsanctioning Iran. And this is something that there was a lot of hubbub online from all the Israeli influencers saying, we've heard that Trump might be negotiating with Iran. If this is true, this is treason, right? Listen to this.
So why is the U.S. helping to fund a country that it's currently at war with, Mr. Secretary?
Again, Kristen, why don't we have good facts here? That Iranian oil was always going to be sold to the Chinese. It was going to be sold at a discount. So which is better, Kristen? Which is better? If oil prices spiked to $150 and they were getting 70% of that, or oil prices below 100, it's better to have them where they are now. And to be clear, we had always planned for this contingency. About 140 million barrels are out on the water. In essence, we are jujitsuing the Iranians. We are using their own oil against them. We have a much better line of sight, to be clear, at Treasury when this oil goes to, if it goes to Indonesia, if it goes to Japan, if it goes to Korea, we have a much better line of sight and are able to block accounts that the oil goes into. When it goes into China, it completely gets recycled. So to be clear, that 14 billion number is grossly overstated.
So that's really interesting, right? Scott Bessent admitting that we're unsanctioning Iran as we're at war with them. Again, doesn't make a lot of sense, but nothing about the stories we're being told make sense. And what's happening now is that, number one, you have Netanyahu calling for new pipelines to be built where all oil in the Persian Gulf from Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and gas would be directed to Haifa, right? And basically Israel would become the epicenter of all energy production in the Middle East, where all that would be refined. Haifa has been struck over the past week multiple times by Iran. That's at least the stories that are being told. And then in response, Israel attacked Iran's energy facilities. I think Trump just last night said if the Strait of Hormuz isn't opened up in the next 48 hours, we're going to blow up the biggest energy facility in Iran. But this is really interesting. I think you are very familiar with this. Look what just got bombed in Israel. Dimona. Does that name mean anything to you?
That is where JFK said that Israel had their undisclosed nuclear program, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, well, not just that. Actually, the mainstream media is now actually admitting that there is they call it a nuclear energy research center, right? That's what they call it. This nuclear energy research center has been struck, and that's like shame on the Iranians for doing that. But it's worth noting that you're absolutely right. Dimona is where the secret nuclear energy center is. That's the one that JFK was trying to get shut down in '63. That was, the reason they shot him. And they, Israel is unique because I think there's 4 countries that haven't fully signed on to all of the nuclear non-proliferation agreements. Although the other 3, I think, are in the process of ratifying those agreements because they understand that nuclear energy is coming back and they want to get like a nuclear reactor. But Israel remains the one country in the entire world, you can go look this up, that has never signed one nuclear treaty ever. They're the only country with that designation. By the way, Iran has signed all of them. So if we're looking at like little boxes to check, like on the surface level, why are we at war with Iran right now? Well, we're being told the one thing that President Trump says is they can't have a nuclear weapon, right? The other thing we're being told is that they're controlled by religious zealots, right? And number 3 is that they're extremely aggressive and they want to attack Israel. Those are the 3 reasons that we're being told, and potentially the United States. Those are the 3 reasons that we're being told that we're at war with Iran right now. Well, if you take a step back and you look at Israel, they have nuclear weapons. They've admitted to this. Mark Levin has admitted to this. He said they have 200 nuclear warheads. They have illegal nuclear weapons. They are controlled by religious zealots, right? And those religious zealots have demonstrated that they are extremely aggressive in this campaign to establish Greater Israel. So it appears to me that all of the metrics that we have applied as justification for a war with Iran, Israel also meets that standard. And so if we're going to be consistent in our logic and how we apply these things, we should also be at war with Israel if that is actually the reason that we're at war with Iran. And I would just question, are we, like, is this war really meant to be levied at Iran, or is the war actually being levied at Israel? Because they're getting pounded right now, and they're even admitting that they've run out of interceptors. Their own media is reporting, the Haifa refinery being destroyed. Here is another one from the Jerusalem Post. Experts warn Haifa refinery is a time bomb despite limited damage. An Iranian strike, saying it's just a matter of time before this thing gets hit and just becomes an enormous explosion, right? So again, like, I'm wondering what's actually happening here, and I'm wondering if who's actually the victim, so to speak, the target of this war.
I'm with you on that one. Here's what I'll say, and then I'll let you, beautiful family, by the way, and I'll let you get to the family duties. It almost seems like there's a war within the war. Like there's the one that we see at the surface level that's being reported on that we do these shows on. But again, like you said, Haifa's getting hit. If you check these boxes on, well, Iran's doing this and it's doing that. And then, of course, there's the argument, yes, but Iran does a lot of stuff through proxy. But then again, is Iran really controlled by these crazy religious zealots? And if so, well, who controls those guys? Who's the one that's using? Because, when we think proxy, we think terrorist groups, we think these smaller factions. But is there a country, or is there a group of people that are using Iran itself as the proxy? And is Trump, through these efforts that we see unfolding in these combat operations, which will probably be declared a war soon, is that to expose some of the ties and some of these connections? Because again, you can't ignore the fact that a lot of Israel within the government, the intelligence, and the military is being called into question by people who normally would have ever even fathomed having that conversation. And I'll give it to you so we can wrap up.
Yeah, and there's so I would speculate. My speculation, I've said this before, but this is a more succinct way to say it. I think the Venezuela model, which is the term that the Trump administration uses now to describe what we did with Venezuela, which really all we did was we just ostensibly removed Nicolas Maduro and we just started doing business with them. Nothing else was changed, really, right? We lifted sanctions, now we're doing business with them. I wonder if the Venezuela model already happened during the first Trump administration. And there's a really interesting timeline. If you go look, Matt, Eric, and Matt was pushing back on me on this, but then he started presenting timeline things, and I started presenting timeline things on our last show on Breaking History. May 12th, 2018, we pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. May 15th, 2018, 3 days later, Trump issues sanctions against their the Iranian central bank governor. Saif was his name. 3 months later, August 2018, this was a Q post, by the way. Rouhani, who was the leader of Iran at the time, arrests not only the governor of the central bank, Saif, the guy that Trump had targeted with his sanctions, and accused him of money laundering. He arrests Saif. He arrests the vice president, who was Arakchi's nephew. Arakchi is now the foreign minister. And what they were accused of is they were accused of illegally selling $150 million of U.S. cash and $20 million in euros. Tell me, how would somebody in Iran, where it's illegal to have those currencies, how would they get their hands on $150 million of U.S. cash? Is there a storyline or a narrative that we've been told from the past 10 years of how they would have gotten their hands on that?
Well, I find it interesting that 150 and 20 would be 170, and you drop all the zeros. And
I know. Well, there's that. I mean,
and that's for a whole nother show.
Yeah. But my point is, do you remember the pallets of cash that Obama sent to them? Yeah. I think the Iran nuclear deal, the first one that Obama did, wasn't even about nuclear. I think it was actually about money laundering. I think they sent them hundreds of millions of dollars in cash, and then those guys, the corrupt elements in Iran, took it, laundered it, sold it, and then enriched themselves. And Trump sanctioned them right after he pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal. Then 3 months later, the Iranian government arrested them. Saif went to prison for 10 years. Arakchi went to prison for 8 years. And his uncle, who at the time was a deputy foreign minister, then was elevated to foreign minister. So again, these are just patterns that I'm noticing. I don't know what the conclusions are, but again, I just wonder, like speculate, did the Venezuela model already happen? And now we're basically playing out something else. Something else is playing out. And maybe it's bad elements in Iran that still need to be cleaned up. Maybe there's that possibility. But I also look at the fact that Iran is pretty like steadfast in saying, we're not interested in a ceasefire. We're not interested in de-escalation. You started this. We're going to finish it. And now Israel is getting pounded. Their nuclear facility is getting pounded as they are saying, we're going to call up 450,000 soldiers from our reserves to invade Lebanon. They're saying that they're going to take all of southern Lebanon, south of the Litani River, and annex it. Like they're going full bore war, and they're calling for boots on the ground in Iran, which Lindsey Graham just said is a likelihood. Boots on the ground meaning U.S. boots on the ground. So again, I think this is all like escalating. But at the same time, I think all of it feels like it's all very controlled. So
it's definitely a very, what's that, the waltz, right? The dance,
Yeah.
that it definitely still feels like that Trump is doing this.
Yeah.
It's, because people know I definitively do not have a pro Joe Kent stance, but I am also aware of, could he be playing a role? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the fact
I certainly don't think that President Trump was duped into doing this, was tricked into doing this, or made like a political miscalculation. Like that's my stance on that. And I think you certainly agree with that. So
yeah, 100%.
So my whole thing has been like even though I'm disappointed that the neocons and Zionists got their way, my thing has been, don't get angry about it, understand it. Like, help me understand it. Like, let's keep looking at data, just take in data, because the truth reveals itself after you, I think, digest enough data.
Trump gave us a model very early on, right? With those jabs that we put into our body. Look how long he said, I'm the father of this, and it is great. And we were just like, bro, what? You're nuts. He knows how to force these conversations to the surface for us to have them. And he will say it, or he will create that environment by either saying things, doing things, or putting people into power that he knows is going to trigger emotions. He knows that it's going to, and he's perfected it. So I just tell everybody, just respond honestly, and you'll be doing your part.
Dude, love you, man. Appreciate you doing this. Love doing this with you. But, I got to sign off now because the kids are ready.
You are good, brother. Bye, gorgeous. All right, you go play daddy, bro. I'll catch you on next week.
Thanks for having me, man. Later.
Of course, later. So you guys, one of the things, let me make sure I get that off. One of the things to consider is, like I said, I'm not a Joe Kent is a good guy. You guys have, this on Monday's show, I'll be presenting the argument of why I think so with a bunch of clips. But I am also aware of the idea and the concept that there's kayfabe out there. I am aware of, listen, especially if you're someone who follows the boards, there are good guys, or there are guys that we think are good, they're going to be bad. There are bad guys that we think are bad, are going to be good, and an assortment of everything in between. So I just try to measure it is, what is the consequence of being wrong? Whatever position we take, if we're wrong in our position, what is the consequence of that? And kind of use that tool to help measure. Speaking of kids, since we had Ghost's gorgeous kids that joined us, and I have mine that are waiting for me to join them as well, we will wrap this up with our final ad from Rumble about the kids guide, because at the end of the day, they are the most important thing. So parents, real talk for a second. America is about to hit a huge milestone. We're coming up on the 250th birthday, 250 years of freedom, grit, sacrifice, and the greatest experiment in self-government the world has ever seen. This is the perfect moment to help your kids understand why this country matters. Not just fireworks and hot dogs, but the story behind it all. There's a free guide called The Kid's Guide to America's 250th Birthday. And it's honestly a great way to introduce kids to how America began, who the founding fathers were, what they risked, and why the ideas they fought for still matter today. This guide sends kids back to the moment when brave men signed the Declaration of Independence, knowing full well that they were risking their lives for freedom. It breaks it all down in a way kids can actually understand and enjoy without watering it down or turning it into boring schoolwork. If you care about raising kids who know where their country came from and why it's worth preserving, this is something you'll want to grab. And the best part, it's completely free with a special offer. You just need to pay $2 for shipping and postage. Just head to freeusabirthday.com. That's freeusabirthday.com, and the Kids Guide to America's 250th birthday for your kids today. America's story matters. Make sure the next generation knows it. And again, if you're like, I don't see that QR code on my screen, Alpha, it's because you got to watch on Rumble. So again, run over to Rumble. When you're done watching on the platform you are, that link will be down in the description. And we did get a Rumble rant coming in at the very end. Dollar for dollar, Redneck Renegade 03 says, happy Sunday, y'all. God bless. Praying hands, one of these, and cheers with some beers. You guys, again, go support Ghost, the Substack he does, the shows that he does on Badlands. Those links are going to be out in the description for you guys to watch. And it is my assessment. And like I said, I'll be talking more about this in the days to come, the weeks to come, if we have that much time. But it's my position that based off what I see now and some of the chatter that I have from people is that the SAVE Act is not going to pass. And Trump's pushing it this hard because, again, one of the things that we talked about today, the narratives, court of public opinion is so important. And Trump needs to, not just with us, it's a bipartisan position. You have people on the left that have even been making the argument, the Democrats, or I'm sorry, the Republicans, they stole the elections, that they have become the election deniers because that's just the upside down world that we live in. But the reason this is a good thing is because the fact that our election system is compromised and that elections are being stolen is something that has to be a bipartisan issue. We have to have both sides of the people's portion of the parties, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, recognize that, hey, the SAVE Act is common sense. It's not the have all end all, but it's a major blow to the infiltration and the parts where they steal our elections or compromise them. Why wouldn't anybody want these things to pass? And if everybody shares that opinion, and then all of a sudden we see these rhinos that are against it, people are going to be pissed. The court of public opinion is going to be at a heightened sense of what the heck's going on. And we're going to be dancing on the edge of despair unless there's a resolution or a plan at that position, right? And some of the words you keep hearing about are insurrection, martial law, posse comitatus. And so I would tell you guys, I'm working on an article. It's a huge article. It's actually a book. It's bigger than the last one that I just dropped. It's taking me a little bit longer because I keep adding to it, but it's going to go into the definitions of posse comitatus, of the Insurrection Act, of martial law. So this way everybody has a clear understanding of what exactly they are, because these things are going to get weaponized for fear porn very shortly. After that, it's going to go into the historic precedents. Have we used these things before, and under what circumstances, and what does that look like? And I'm going to lay that all out there, in our history, what presidents and why. And people will see, because again, you saw a lot of people screaming when everything was going down with ICE in Minnesota, here comes the Insurrection Act. And for those of you that followed me, I said, I don't think it's going to be happening here yet. And it's because there are legal things that have to be in play. If the courts are still working and local law enforcement is still functioning, Trump cannot declare the Insurrection Act. There is no precedence where that happens. So there's the different runs of the ladder that have to be met. And so I'm going to lay that out for you guys. I'm going to lay out the chessboard that the globalists try to create under Biden's administration, the counter chessboard moves Trump made during his administration with executive orders and policies, and all these different scenarios of what could potentially be happening here in the next few months, so we all understand it. And why does that matter to the Middle East in 30 minutes-ish? Because it all is one big chess game. Everything from the Middle East to South America to what's happening in our country domestically, it all complements each other. Whether you see that as good or bad, it all complements each other. And you have to be able to zoom out to look at this. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Please do me a solid. Go support Ghost's work. Those links are down in the description. Smash the thumb, hit the heart, leave a comment, and we will catch you guys on the next one. God bless and simplify.